Hey, everybody. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live event today, where we'll be talking about the state of LinkedIn and what to expect on the platform in 2024. My name is Tim Fullerton. I am the founder and CEO of Fullerton Strategies, which is a digital marketing agency. We work with B2B clients. We have some authors, a whole host of clients. And my background, I've been in digital for 20 years. I have done everything from working in marketing at WeWork. I was chief digital officer for the state of New York. I was in the Obama administration and his campaign and a bunch of nonprofits as well. So with that, I also want to introduce my hoodie buddy, which I actually wore this because I knew this was one of his signature looks. Liam, do you want to introduce yourself before we decide to jump in?
Sure, Tim. So my name is Liam. I am the founder of Liam's Brand Stand, which is a personal brand agency that helps leaders and founders build personal brands that attract clients, opportunity, and talent on primarily the LinkedIn platform, but we do a whole bunch of other things as well. Started the business in August, primarily on LinkedIn. Prior to that, I spent about 18 years working at technology startups in various operational capacities, primarily sales operations, go-to-market operations, revenue operations, customer operations, all that good stuff. So passionate about numbers and people and process, and now starting my own business to sort of take all of them and put them all together. So I'm excited to be here. Really pumped that you and I have connected. We connected obviously on a different platform and then have migrated our way over here. And now we're going back and forth all the time, helping each other with our solopreneurship journeys, although yours is no longer solo. Congratulations. And I'm looking forward to talking about my favorite platform online, which is obviously LinkedIn. So much going on this platform right now. It's this year we saw those articles come out that say, oh, it's cool, LinkedIn is cool now. Sorry, but LinkedIn is cool now. Never thought I'd see that, but I'm pumped about it and I'm looking forward to the future. So can't wait to chop it up.
Cool. Well, let's dive into it. And I'll just tell everybody on who we've already got a good amount of people have joined us, and I'm sure we'll get some more. We're going to we're going to go back and forth. We want to keep it casual. Clearly we're dressed for casual. We want to answer any questions that folks have as well, because we find that it's a lot better to have a dialogue and get into it. And we actually just got a first question that I'm happy to answer, which is from Andrew, which he actually asked us, what platform did we first connect on? And the answer is Post News, which sort of both refugees from the great Twitter migration of the past year and looking for some alternatives. I also just love trying new platforms, and there was a small group of us that met over there, and I think most of us are still over there a little bit, but have migrated over to LinkedIn, which I would say for the first time in my life, LinkedIn is probably my favorite social platform, which is something I thought I'd never say. So
you and most other people, I would imagine, it's sort of been slowly creeping. It's actually interesting because it is one of the oldest and most well-established of the networks, right? It was around before Facebook, I think, and Twitter, I think, around the same time, potentially.
around the same time, I think. Yeah.
2004. So, I mean, we've all been here forever, right? And it's just now that people are starting to actually use this platform for conversation and education and information, which is exciting. Yeah, and Post News is still doing their thing, right? I haven't been there in a while.
Yeah, I think it's a good one for long form content, and there's a really great community over there. So if you're interested in sort of reading more than a paragraph or two, I would highly recommend checking it out. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm a good example of sort of the new users to LinkedIn in 2023. Like I've run social teams my entire career, but we've always focused mostly on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook a long time ago, and a little bit, TikTok now and YouTube, obviously. But, for those of you who don't know, I started my own business this year in 2023, and I've essentially grown the entire business off LinkedIn with only organic content, which has been really, really interesting. But, I originally was doing a terrible job when I first started, because originally all I had done for the past 5 years was promote my the content that my team was generating at WeWork. I just, I used it to promote the great work the team was doing and to get awareness out there. But I never really used it for myself. And so when I started this year, I kind of just I decided I was going to follow a few large accounts, and turned out that some of them were what I would call the growth hackers. And I originally tried to do some of that, and it completely failed, and because it wasn't authentically me. And
Mhm.
I learned early on, after doing that for a few weeks, I was like, you know what, I should just write what I think. And I think I started with a post about authenticity, and that you would always get an authentic view from me, and which is very me anyways. Like, it's kind of just how I talk and how I write generally. And it's been remarkable how much more successful that is. And I think it's a really good example for folks about the types of content. And I'm sure, Liam, you tell people this all the time too, but being authentically you on this platform is really one of the first steps to being successful on here. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that as well, since you do a lot of one-on-one coaching with individuals and with brands about messaging and how to write. But like, how have you sort of seen that sort of evolve this year as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're going to see business evolving pretty extensively over the next couple of years, right? If you take a step back and just think about like what we as a species have gone through with the pandemic, right? Like just an immediate abrupt stop to whatever the status quo was prior. Then working from home, thinking remote work is the future, everything is happening, and then now we're seeing things start to sort of come back to normal a little bit. People are returning to office, but some companies are remaining remote. And like collectively, we've been through a lot, and it's been a very big change and a very big departure. And we've spent a significant amount of time blending the personal with the professional. And I think that is probably fantastic for business and for professionals in general, because it proves that we don't have to have this bifurcation between the two. When companies hire people, they hire people for skill, but also for personality fit, for culture addition, right? Like, are you additive to our culture? Would your personality mesh well with our team, with our clients, with our customers? Personality is an incredibly important part of professional environment. And so this whole idea that like you have to have a professional you and a personal you, I think is starting to diminish a little bit. And I think that's fantastic, because unlike some people, like I have been primarily working in environments where things are very laid back, right? I mean, I've
Right.
worked in tech startups. Like at Living Social, we had a ball pit in our sales office. Like that, like literally, like it was on the front cover of the Washingtonian. A bunch of our salespeople just sitting in a ball pit with their computers. Like, I'm not used to being in an environment that's really buttoned up, right? And I think that's why for me it was so natural to just kind of share my personality on the profile on LinkedIn, because I've always kind of brought that to the office. So I just think it's great, because we're going to be, who we are attracts opportunity and all sorts of different things. So why wouldn't we share it?
Yeah, and I mean, and I think it's a really important point. And I think, I personally have always chosen, jobs in my career path and things that I believe in, whether it was nonprofits or politics, or frankly, even WeWork. Like, the idea of making work a more enjoyable experience. Like, what a powerful mission to do that. And I think there were financial problems, clearly, but that mission was near and dear to my heart. Like, I mean, making like people's lives better, 8
Yep.
hours a day, like, hugely great. So I've, and in my business now, it's sort of the same. Like, I work for clients that I believe in, and and it's been working really well. So that melding of personal and professional is just going to be more and more of a trend moving forward. And I think, in particular, as you mentioned, with the rise of remote work, right? Like, people aren't able to, or want to, which is fair, go into an office every day and do that sort of in person, collaboration, or frankly, just like, shooting the shit or whatever. And so developing your personality and your brand, I think, as you put it a lot, is important because people aren't just hiring a robot. They're hiring a human being that they want to do a task, but they also have to fit. And, if you have crafted a brand online, because they're all going to look you up, right?
Yep.
Especially on LinkedIn,
Yep.
you're actually getting a leg up on the competition if you're presenting yourself in a way that fits that culture and that brand.
Yep.
So I think, we've seen a lot more of that this year, which I think is really exciting. And I think, the other thing I'll add to that is, LinkedIn is really at this point, people are going to laugh at this, but LinkedIn is really only the only social platform for adults at this too, which I think
Yeah.
is an important distinction also, that, this is a place where you can generally have conversations without, yelling and shouting, which is becoming increasingly difficult on the other platforms. And so I think that's also why we've seen LinkedIn pass 1 billion users for the first time this year, because people
Yep.
are looking for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's you hit the nail on the head, right? I never really spent a whole lot of time on Twitter over the course of the last 2 decades because I've always found it to be pretty sort of either political in nature or vitriolic or a combination of the two. They're very closely related in a lot of ways. And there's a self-policing mechanism at play on LinkedIn. There always kind of has been, right? Nobody wants their boss or their future employers or colleagues or clients to see them being an ass online. And I use that word because like some people are that way. And that's not to suggest that there aren't people on LinkedIn that sometimes say things that aren't really all that great. But generally speaking, it's not part of the conversation and it's not the reason that people show up. I mean, on other platforms, there are people that are literally there just to troll.
Right.
And that really doesn't exist here. So that's why one of the reasons that I love it as well. I want to get your thoughts though on as it relates to sort of branding and personal branding. I think two things. One, obviously, authenticity was Time's word of the year, right? Was it
Yes.
Time? Okay.
Or
So
Merriam-Webster or somebody. There's
yeah,
somebody
one of
official.
those. I want to talk about that with you because as an expert marketer with as much experience as you have, obviously words matter. They're very important. Brand matters, but historically speaking, brand has been related to companies, right? People don't think of themselves as having a brand. And authenticity has sort of gotten its own sort of bad rap in recent years. And I think a lot of people are kind of like, authenticity is kind of a buzzword. What does it actually mean? And then the brand piece, like the personal brand piece, I have a lot of people that sort of bristle at the idea of a personal brand because they're like, I'm not a company, I'm a person, right? What are your thoughts on those two things? Like those two words in particular, brand and authenticity. Like, why do people not really know how to react to them?
Well, I think it's a great question. And, I think about both of those a lot. And authenticity to me is always been something that, I've really, tried to focus on,
Yeah,
and being authentically me, like not trying to present myself in a way that doesn't fit with who I am. And I think I did do that when I was trying some of those growth hacky things back in the spring, and it just felt off to me. And I think people bristle at it because the word gets thrown out a lot, but the reality is authenticity only matters if you are actually authentic.
correct.
So there are a lot of people who talk about being authentic and then do the complete opposite, right? Or they use it as a word without any action or meaning behind it.
Right.
And I think with my personal business that I've started, I've spent a lot of time, really thinking about being intentional when I talk to my team, and being and saying things like actually meaning it and following through with it. So it's one of those words that's really funny because you have to be authentic for authenticity to work.
Correct.
And I think that is something that companies miss a lot. Like there's a lot of words that get pushed around in times of crisis, or if they're like talking about doing good or whatever, but like the proof is in the actions after that. And so I think when you talk about those words, that you have to think about the full picture, from saying it to like actually delivering on the things you're talking about, or presenting, if you're presenting yourself as a nice person, easy to deal with, like you need to be you need to be that type. If you're forcing it, it's going to cause you, failure. But and then on the brand thing, I think people bristle at it because they do think of it as a business thing. But the reality is your brand is just really who you are, right?
Yep.
And who you want to be and who you want people to see you as. So, when you're thinking about being on LinkedIn, for example, that, thinking about how you want people to see you is hugely important, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
I've thought a lot about that in my posts since I moved beyond the hacky stuff, which, by the way, I don't recommend anyone do that.
When you say hacky stuff, what are you talking about? Hacky stuff?
Oh, I mean, like the people who focus on the formats and
Yeah, the
the
templates and
time and how to approach content from a tactical perspective rather than like actually talking about the thing that you know best. I
yes.
think the most important thing to do is to write content that is authentically you, because it will come across better and you will look more professional, and that's the perception that you want, rather than you must post at 8:45 a.m. every morning. You must put 10 comments in posts, blah 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 blah. And I think some of that's fine, and playing the game a little bit's okay, but like I would much prefer folks write from the heart than a one line for every like post, right? Space, space, space. Like I'm so tired of that.
Poetry.
Or the carousels that don't really say anything but look pretty. Like, just tell me what you want to talk about. Just tell me your expertise. Like I don't, So that's sort of what I mean by both of those things.
So that's great, and I think one of the things that I would love to talk about with you a bit as it relates to LinkedIn and the evolution of the platform is we talk about how it is a little bit different than other social platforms. Um, Yet where there's organic reach, there will always be growth hackers. There will always be people that are trying to make a buck off of getting other people to buy into their courses and do all this stuff. And not slamming courses. I plan to create one, but like I think it's interesting how many people are talking about it now, right? All of a sudden, there's billion ghostwriters and a ton of LinkedIn personal brand people, and they weren't here a year ago, right? They weren't talking about this stuff a year ago. It's that whole, idea that you can grow really quickly here that has just flooded people to this platform. But I think the thing that is so interesting is that even LinkedIn acknowledged, right? Dan Roth was on a podcast with Jason Pfeiffer from Entrepreneur Magazine this year, and he talked about how when something goes viral on LinkedIn, internally at LinkedIn, they don't actually view that as a good thing. They don't want to be
Right.
the next social platform. They want to be a professional social network, and I think that distinction is very interesting. Now we see that impressions are just getting crushed, right? There's a suppression of impressions. Everybody's complaining about it. People that have been on the platform for multiple years are like, what is going on here? Like, I went from having an average of 15,000 impressions per post to an average of 8,000. And then last month, my average was 3,800, which is like just unheard of for me.
Right.
But is LinkedIn sending a message here with this? Like, what do we think is going on in their heads that they are minimizing impressions across the platform?
I mean, I think there's a few things. And Raj, thank you for the kind comment. Glad you joined. He joined is what he said. So thank you for that. And there's a lot of cool ones in there if people want to take a look. But I don't think they want. I think that's exactly right. And when I originally heard that, I was kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, you really don't want that stuff. But when you start to think about what LinkedIn is and what they have been good at for a long time, it does make sense, right? Like they started as a job site essentially, right? 15 years ago or whenever it was, mostly. And
Yep.
then they realized quickly the power of connection in the business world, which no one was filling. And and then the feed came, and and I think they're realizing that this is a professional platform, and we don't want people writing to go viral. And I think when you look at the other platforms, Twitter in particular right now is like the things that are taking off are generally things that are attacking somebody else or calling someone stupid or even worse, harassment or anti-Semitism or racism of any sort against anybody, because it gins everybody up for rage.
Yeah.
And generally when you leave that platform, you feel pretty bad about yourself, which I am slowly extracting myself out of that. And Twitter is not going to be big in my plans for 2024. I can tell you that. But I think LinkedIn knows that like the more niche discussions are the things that are driving the most value. Like I look forward to seeing, like, Liam, your stuff and what you have to say, or people that are sort of in the marketing space and the founder space. Like, I want to see what those people are talking about, and I want a feed that has really interesting conversations about it. And I don't necessarily need to see a post that has a million likes or whatever. I like, it's nice when a post takes off, and that's great. But I really want to have more meaningful conversations on here than I see on the other platforms. So I think it's a smart move. I think it's a balancing act. You obviously don't want to turn people off to posting if they're not seeing any reaction, which I think we're seeing on some other platforms. And I think Instagram's one where I generally just am now seeing videos from people I have no idea who they are. And like, I don't see my friend's stuff, which is a real problem. And I think LinkedIn is realizing that too, and want to make sure that those meaningful conversations are the things that actually keep people on the platform, more than, you know, seeing somebody who has a ton of followers, basically saying something to you that everybody already knows already. So I think it's a good move. I think it's gonna be really interesting though to see how people pivot and adapt to it in 2024. Because I think you're right, like that those impression numbers are gonna go down no matter what.
Yeah, yeah. I see a lot of conversation around people thinking, well, is LinkedIn already shifting to the more traditional next phase of a social platform where you have to pay to play? I personally just feel like it's way too soon for them to do that. I'm not denying that it will happen eventually, but when you only have a single digit percentage of the people that are on your platform posting content to the platform,
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense to me that you would actually uh, implement a pay to play model so soon, because you're just going to turn more people off, right? Like, you don't want to decrease, you want to get a groundswell of people, and then
Right.
it's like, because I have to assume that other social platforms have much higher numbers of monthly active users and weekly content creators than a single digit percentage. I don't know.
Oh,
I'm not
for
an
sure.
expert in other platforms, but that's what I think.
So I agree with all of that, and I hope that they keep the pay to play off for as long as possible. And this is what I've seen on other platforms. Facebook is a great example, and Instagram is a great example of when you do pay to play, is that you allow the people with the most money or revenue to get boosted, and folks that are here that maybe they're looking for a job, or maybe they did something in their job that no one else has done and have something meaningful to share. You're never going to see that stuff
Right.
because they're not going to have the resources to pay for it. You basically eliminate any conversations from the nonprofit space because those folks are just not going to be able to invest in promoting on LinkedIn. And I've worked in both the B2B space and I've worked in the nonprofit space. And the reality is, like, each side thinks the other side are the pros. And the
Yeah.
reality is they're all pros. They just have different priorities and missions. So like losing that whole community, I think would be really detrimental to the platform. Like some of the stuff that I see now, from people I followed for a long time and that are still in the nonprofit space is still relevant to me being a B2B marketer essentially at this point. So and it also hurts like communities of color and other groups. Like, so I hope they don't do that, or they find ways around it, because I think it will be really detrimental to the conversations that people are really finding useful on the platform now.
Yeah, that I agree with that. I think it's interesting. One quick comment that came up: John Aspinall talked about LinkedIn should follow TikTok style of two feeds, a for you page and a following page. I think that's very interesting. They're obviously adapting some of those techniques with the direct messages, right? There's two inboxes now. That's relatively new, I think, this year. And it's interesting because I don't think I realized just how much stuff I was getting in my direct inbox before that I just had zero interest in until they brought the other inbox in play. I was looking at it the other day and I was like, wow, like there's a lot in here. There's a ton of volume, and like my
Right.
direct messages are a mess to begin with, but the fact that I'm not dealing with all of that crap is really helpful for me.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I agree, and I mean, I will say that other inbox now, which is maybe we're gonna get to this in a second. The three things we like. Maybe we'll do that instead. Well, maybe we'll pause here and shift because we're already at I think 26 minutes, and
we
I
could
know we
go
could go all
forever.
day, which people will tune out if we keep going all day. So, and this was Liam's idea, and I really love it. We're gonna talk about three things we love about the platform this year, and I don't know if we'll be able to do three frustrations, but we'll talk about our frustrations after that. So I'm going to have Liam go first since it was his idea, and I will try not to steal any of his good ideas. So Liam, you go ahead.
All right, cool. So I think for me, analytics came to the platform this year, which is great. I'm a data nerd. I have for 4 years been subscribing to a platform called Shield, which allows me to export all of my data and run pivot tables and do all sorts of analysis, like nerd out about it. So it's about time that LinkedIn decided, okay, we want people to start taking this platform seriously from a content creation standpoint. We have to at least show them some metrics that tell them what they're doing and why they're, if it's working, if it's not working. It's also been funny to sort of see how they have implemented it, how they've rolled it out. Like it used to be that they would show your analytics at the very top of your profile, and that would be a big red flag when you logged in every day, and it was demoralizing and it was
Yeah.
bad for your mental health. And now that's gone, so they're starting to pay attention to that stuff, which is great. Analytics is still rudimentary on the platform. I mean, if you compare it to other social platforms, they're not giving you nearly as much as you want. And there's a long laundry list of things that I have that I would love to know more about. I one of the things that I encourage people to do when they're creating a personal brand is leave a lot of comments on other people's posts, because it gets you in the habit of conversing with people, which is what LinkedIn wants to see. And then you can also turn some of those comments into posts, right? Like it's great inspiration for future posts, but LinkedIn doesn't tell you which comments you've left on the platform get the most engagement. That would be a remarkable thing to get in 2024. I would love to be able to export all of my comments, which you can do from LinkedIn, and see which ones got the most engagement, because they're like micro posts themselves, right? So that is something that I would love to see personally. I would love to see how many. I would love to see who my top fans are. I mean, like, who are the people that show up repeatedly? There is a new tool that I've been using called Fruitful, and it was put together by a former McKinsey consultant and Wharton MBA. So, like, it's just a spreadsheet, but it's a really useful spreadsheet, and it tells you all the people that have shown up on a week-over-week basis to comment on your content, and it gives you things like their follower account. It gives you things like their comment authority. So like how much of sway they kind of have on the platform based on all their activity. It's really, really useful. So something like that would be incredible to see. Also just highlighting, right now they're like telling me things that I could theoretically get pretty easily if I just manually looked at my stats. Show me some insights, like give me actionable insights. Like your audience tends to really engage with these are the topics that you love the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Use AI to really help me create more relevant content to my audience. That's what I would love to see. I was super excited when pinned comments came out, which is a very small feature, but it was something that LinkedIn nerds have been asking for forever. That was short-lived. They pulled it back before they even, it's almost as if like they did it within a month and then they were like, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore. I don't know why that went away, but I wish that would come back. I realized from a product perspective, they were probably saying, well, this is just solving a problem that we don't think is a problem anymore, which is they say that putting links in your posts does not diminish your reach. And I just don't buy that fully.
I do not.
I can tell by
There
your
is
head
no
nod
way
that you don't
that is.
either.
I appreciate the effort from them, but there's
Yeah.
no way. There's just no way. No way.
So yeah, I think that was something that I wish would come back. And then I think like just so They announced yesterday actually that they're going to have like a LinkedIn kind of coach. And when I posted this morning to remind folks in my network that this was happening, I noticed at the bottom of my post, it said, "Would you like to add a little more context or insight to this post?" And I was like, I'd never seen that before. And so I said, "Oh, I said, this is interesting. Like this must be LinkedIn Coach." Now I'm not really LinkedIn Coach's target user. I don't need help like talking here, but it was interesting to see it. So I think that is another thing that I loved from 2023 is that LinkedIn is really doubling down on conversation, connection, rather than just people posting out into the abyss
Yeah.
and the same recycled, regurgitated corporate stuff that's boring and dry as toast. Like, let's get some
Right.
conversations happening here,
Yeah.
and you're seeing it a lot. I mean, for me, when I make a post or when I encourage people to post, you're the host of your post, right? You're inviting people to have a conversation with you, and it's on you to sort of facilitate that conversation and tag other people and like introduce other people to other people. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So those are the three
Yeah.
things that I was most excited about this year.
Cool. Well, I'll do my positives and then we can go to the negatives after that. So,
Sweet.
so my first one is actually what we're doing right now is the rise of LinkedIn Live. I was a little skeptical at first and I was like, oh, geez, they're just, this is just another way to like take on the webinar world or whatever. But I've actually used it for my clients, and I have to say, like, it's been a real like huge success. And one in particular, they were doing webinars, like on Zoom, and they'd get, 8 to 12 people, but like it required a full marketing effort, right? You had
Yep.
to use your email, you had to use social, and it was like the only thing that you did um um uh for like a week or two when you're promoting it.
Yep.
And we just decided that we were going to shift them to LinkedIn Live. We cared more about the visibility than the funnel. Obviously email capture is something you can't really do on LinkedIn. So like, but we made a decision to change. And we've done like 5 or 6 of them. And this is a company in the AI space, and they actually
Cool.
work for niche audiences. Like we did one on how AI can enhance the, insurance industry and how it can help financial services. But we also did one on like social listening. And they have received about 10x the viewership on average of all of their LinkedIn lives. So, I think if you're looking for a visibility play, it's a great way to have, a conversation with folks that feels a bit more relaxed. It's not super, we're in the hoodies, right? So it's like not a super formal thing. And judging by this one alone, like I think at one point there were 45 people live on this thing, and 150 RSVP'd. So like a 33% participation rate from an RSVP is a massive rate. So first of
And
all,
bear in mind that we don't know what intersection there was between those 44, right? So if 44 people have come in,
right, right, it's actually more, right? It's
and
probably
you'll see that in the analytics right afterwards, which is another thing I love. Like they're showing more analytics on this. It's not
yeah,
YouTube level, but like
yeah, no, it's great.
give them some time, right? They're still learning.
Yeah, so that's that one. And the other two are sort of more about content than about like actual functionality. And we've got a question I'll pop up here in a second when
Cool.
I'm done on the functionality. But one is just the rise of fractional everything. And the reason that I mention that is because it's actually, I mean, it's very self-serving, but I one of the biggest things that my company does is provide fractional CMO services. But what's been really awesome is to see a lot of really, talented marketing folks who are kind of tired of the sort of being in-house for one place, being like, you know what, like I have a valuable skill set that I can offer to many other people and have, the freedom to do that. And so having a community, a community here talking about that stuff has been incredibly helpful for me. And I think it's also helped others decide to take the plunge. And I think for the most part, if you do it correctly, like this is the best job I've ever had. I mean, I'm my own boss, so I don't, I guess I can say that, but it's been really great to have that network and being able to build that. And then the other one is really the rise of empathy. I think businesses forever have not treated their employees well. They don't communicate well to them. they treat them like a cog. And I think people are just fed up with it. And I'm seeing more and more people deciding to do their own things. I mean, we both are doing our own things,
Yep.
right? And I'm seeing more and more people being like, you know what? I don't have to do that, especially with the rise of remote work where I can consult and I can do these things and really like people making a concerted effort to talk about why that they want that in a workplace. And I'm really hoping that this is a shift in culture that we desperately need. So those are my three things. And
Love it.
then I'm got a question here we're going to pop up from Jason, which is, what are our thoughts on the viability of pages and groups? We'll tackle this before we go into our negatives. So Liam, do you want to? I have strong thoughts on this. So you can go first.
Yeah. So I think that LinkedIn is sitting on a gold mine with the groups feature that they are just not paying attention to. You have so much emphasis on community right now. You've got Circle, you've got Discord, you've got Slack, you've got Heartbeat. There are so many different platforms now that are being built solely around community. And LinkedIn has this groups feature that is essentially like a barren wasteland right now. If you go to a LinkedIn group, you are not going to see a whole lot of engagement or conversation or anything. And I just think that's a colossal mistake. And I
Yeah.
hope in 2024 that they start to double down on that, because if they want to keep people on the platform and they want to make it sticky and they want to make it conversational and they want to make it a community built around topics and information, little groups like that are a phenomenal opportunity to do that. So I think
Yeah.
they're really missing out there. Pages, again, like Pages is another kind of like if you look at any company page, it's very hard for them to do it right. It's very hard for them to grow followers. It's very hard for them to get into the ecosystem. Like, um, people just react better to people. And
Yeah.
so, when I talk to clients who are like, oh, well, I got to set up a company page. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you are your company for now, or you are your person. Like, you be you. If you want to build a company page, fine, but like it should be secondary to everything else, because your personality is what attracts your client base. And so, uh, you talk about like, I often talk about this. Like LinkedIn has a bit of an identity crisis in and of itself, right? The
Yeah.
fact that it's been around for so long and it is so many things to so many people, like it's almost like it needs a little bit of a coaching session itself on what is your brand, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'll start with groups and then I'll go to pages. But on groups, I agree. But I think the problem with groups right now is that the ones that I've tried to join have they've just been kind of dumping grounds for self promotion.
Yes.
And maybe Liam, we talked about this. I sort of actually Rachel, who's just dropped a question. I talked to her about this months ago. Was creating groups with experts, right? Like, I think there's plenty of open groups where everybody can play in, but like really trying to, for the folks that have been in marketing for 10, 15, 20 years, like being able to have robust conversations in a place with other people who have gone through those same experiences, I think could be incredibly powerful. And I'm sure some exist. It's very difficult to find them though.
Yep.
Like if you just join the marketing group, it
Yep.
is just, and I understand it, like people trying to promote their businesses. Like I understand the tendency, but like I want more meaningful discussions because I don't need to know, the 101 about SEO, right?
Yep.
Most of us that are on this call know that stuff. Like I want to talk about more specific stuff. Pages, I am incredibly frustrated by pages. I did set up a page for Fullerton Strategies. So if
Yep.
someone wants to go dig around and find it, please go like it. The reality is what I've really done that for is just to validate that I am not just a freelancer, that this is a business.
Totally.
And I have used the in-mail function. I do subscribe to premium to invite 250 of my contacts every month to the channel.
Nice.
And it's really just, there's like 920 people on there now, but it's like good enough so that if somebody doesn't know me and they go, okay, this is like a real business from a real person. I understand. I do wish that there was a little bit more organic lift on those channels because I do think that businesses, if done right, could have meaningful things to say.
Yep.
But I agree with you 100% that people are more interested in people than nameless, in many cases, soulless companies talking to them about their products. So I wish it was tweaked a little bit, but I think really relying on your personal feed is more important. That is why this LinkedIn Live is not being run, which was your recommendation, I should say, to not run it on the Fullerton Strategies LinkedIn page, to do it on my own personal page. And I think the amount of people who have joined in kind of validate that decision. So there's that question. Thank you. There was one. Let's see. I want to get to some questions before we go to negatives.
Yeah, this is great. There's a lot. And by the way, folks, like if you haven't asked a question, ask a question. Like we're just ripping, going through it. Like we'd love to talk about it.
Yeah. And so Sandra asked, what about LinkedIn's notification email? I missed often notifications, and some are from recruiters or clients.
This is a good question.
Yeah.
So I think LinkedIn is in kind of between a rock and a hard place, because what they want is they want people to build a habit of checking LinkedIn more regularly. I think something like 25% of people that are LinkedIn members are actually monthly active users, which from a content platform perspective or a social platform perspective is pretty abysmal. So if they want to condition people to come back regularly, they have to rely less on email and things to pull them, right? They have to kind of build that behavior into play. So I think that's one of the things that might be the case. I've also noticed at a different level, like notifications on posts are decreasing. So I don't get notified every time I get a reaction or every time I get a comment anymore. It's almost like LinkedIn is trying to condition me to like revisit my posts to see if there's anything new there, as opposed to relying on notifications. And that's an interesting observation that I've made in the last month or two as well. Daniel Hall actually mentioned that earlier in the comments, that they will let your post run until it hits a certain threshold, and then they'll stop notifying you things, which is very interesting.
I've noticed that too. And it's interesting. Like, I think that's fine on those. I think, in Sandra's point specifically, like, I think their email notification system is broken. I don't think there is a very clear policy or strategy around it. I got notifications this morning about posts or comments that were made hours before.
Yeah.
So it either needs to be real time, or there needs to be a digest, or don't do it at all.
Yep.
Because I just think that if people, and Sandra makes a good point, if you're reliant on it and you expect it to be there, and then all of a sudden it's not, you could miss important notes from recruiters or clients, like in sending your business backwards rather than what LinkedIn should be doing is forward. So I think that there is definitely stuff there that we should talk, or that LinkedIn needs to sort of figure out. And this goes to a second related question from Rachel, is like hearing Liam, and I'm happy to chime in too, but thoughts on managing the flood of LinkedIn spam, which I think we have all seen a massive increase in the last few months, and is incredibly frustrating. So do you have any tips to deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's going to be interesting to see, because with Google announcing what it announced a few weeks ago about email deliverability and things like that, everyone's going to just flood to LinkedIn because it's easier access to send messages. Although LinkedIn is now putting a restriction on the number of connection requests that you can make if you're not premium. They're limiting it to 10 per month. So that should theoretically, I mean, it depends. More people will just sign up for premium and start sending messages anyways. But honestly, I ignore a lot of the spam that comes in. I'm not an inbox zero guy. If I was an inbox zero guy, I would literally, I had no idea what I would do. I mean, I think my ldarmody at Gmail email, which I like have had since 2004, has well over 1 million unread emails in it.
Oh God, Liam. Giving me anxiety just
I
from
have
hearing
friends.
that.
I have friends who have seen me like share screen on something and been like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "I mean, I don't need to open it to know that I don't need to open it. I'm just gonna leave it there." And I love that. I always love that question. It's one of the best polls I've ever run. Is, are you an inbox zero person or not? I think it got like 7,000 votes.
Well, there's strong opinions on that, on both sides.
And it was very close. It was like a 50-50. It was super close down the line. So I just don't engage. I think it's part of the platform. It sucks. They have to get their head around it at some point. But by and large, I mean, it's also one other thing that I say is be very intentional about who you accept as a connection. Because if you accept people who you don't know, who are in business development roles, you are opening the door for a pitch. And
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is that now when somebody connects something um, to when somebody invites you to connect, LinkedIn automatically makes them a follower of yours. So you don't need to accept their connection
Right.
requests. So I only accept connections from people that I look like are ICP or interesting or in the same industry as me, et cetera, or tons of mutual connections.
Now, is that for people who have creator mode turned on, or does that work for people who don't have creator as well? I know that
Um,
works because I have, obviously, we both have creator mode turned on, which is something I recommend everybody on this
oh yeah,
does.
totally.
But I know it works when you have that, but do you need to turn it on in order for that to be
That's a
to
good question.
function?
I know you need to turn it on in order to get the follow button to show when a post shows up in somebody's feed who's a second degree. I don't know if it applies to that, but in general, to you know reiterate what you said, it doesn't matter if you consider yourself a creator or not. You should have creator mode on.
Yeah.
I think honestly, I think LinkedIn should rename it to something else. Their LinkedIn for Creators account just got renamed to the LinkedIn Guide to Creating or
Yeah.
something like that. So I think even LinkedIn is aware that like their emphasis on creator is probably a bit of a failed marketing campaign.
Yeah.
They need to figure out a better name for it, but you should absolutely have that on. It gets you access to LinkedIn Live audio, LinkedIn Live streaming, newsletters, and pretty much any benefit that you can get as part of premium will
Yeah.
be part of creator mode.
And as somebody who is an inbox zero, or I should say no unread messages, and I have had my Gmail since 2005 when it was invite only, so, like,
Yep.
I kept that up. The reality is it's just incredibly frustrating, and it's actually one of the things that I was gonna mention as one of my, negatives about LinkedIn this year is that I'm just getting hit every single day. I have tried, and a lot of them aren't just pitches. I mean, I get really bad pitches, by the way. And I would say that anybody who's a sales or a BD person on this call, please personalize your outreach. Like, and I will look at personalized outreach. But the second I had someone say today that they offered web development tools and whether I needed my website redone. Well, my firm offers that. Like 2 seconds of research would have seen, and my website's
Yeah.
brand new. So, it's really difficult, and there's a lot of spam that's starting to come, like actual spam. These people who say like, "I want to be your best friend," or "I
Oh
see,"
yeah.
it's all fake. And the
Yep.
problem is, I have marked 10 or 12 of them, and LinkedIn says they don't violate community guidelines, which of course they do, and they're just looking at the words and not like the fact that people are, you know, basically a troll farm that's just like pushing these things out from wherever. And I
Yep.
think if they really want InMail to be a functional tool, they're going to have to address this rather than just keeping the other box.
Yep.
It's going to have to be something more thought through. So I'm hoping that they look at that for next year, but it is incredibly, incredibly painful. So
Yep.
we have another question here from Michael, which is I think is very important for us to talk about. Is LinkedIn still the best place for job seekers? And Liam, I'm going to kick it to you first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think LinkedIn is I often tell people that LinkedIn is a CRM with all the people already loaded into it. So, it's a funny story. My first consultancy, I started it in 2009, and it was called Talent Fish. And I taught people how to leverage LinkedIn to get their foot in the door at companies they wanted to work at. So now you can do that even more easily than you could in 2009. If you are desirous of working in a company, you find people that are at that company who are in the role that you're in or want to be in or might be hiring for that position. You follow them, you connect with them, you engage with their content, you strike up conversation, and you can potentially get referred into the company by somebody who works there as opposed to just sitting there waiting for somebody to get back to you when you apply. So the question, I think, Michael, is it's absolutely the right place for job seekers. I think the way that job seekers use it is evolving and changing. In a world where remote employees are applying to things all over the place, the average company probably posts something that's out there, and you get 500 to 600 to 1,000 applications. That, like, just applying and waiting is not the approach, right? Job seekers really need to own it, need to identify which companies they want to work at, and need to take active measures to network their way into those companies at some point.
Yeah, and Michael, I would say that this is something I'm gonna pitch Liam for a second. This is something that Liam helps people with all the time. So if people are looking for tips and tricks, they should definitely reach out to him after this. But I would say I totally agree, and I think like it isn't just like the old monster, right, where you hit apply.
Yep.
And I actually think that LinkedIn's going to have to figure some stuff out with the job stuff, because the way they have made it so easy for people to apply that like recruiters are just getting absolutely bombarded, and it's
Yes.
making it very difficult for people to actually go through the good, the high quality candidates, and you might get missed solely because of the volume that they're getting. So I think when Liam points to like, developing your personal brand and being out there and talking and showing your expertise, it is hugely valuable. But like, I pointed to earlier, all of my clients, except for maybe one or two, and I have 13, 14 at the moment, came from LinkedIn, and they're from my organic posts. And a lot of it was really previous connections that didn't realize that I was doing this. And then they saw my content when they had a need, and then they send me a note, and we're off to
Bingo.
races. But that's the same for a job seeker who's not looking to start their own thing. It's like being out there, because you probably see this all the time, is when people will post jobs, not just the jobs, the paid jobs posting option, but the thing where people are saying like, know anybody, with a question mark, and then you see a flood of comments tagging people in. Well, you want to be part of that conversation. So like you being out there and you talking about your thing keeps you top of mind for people when they're thinking about who can I tag into this job and things like that. And like when you have a connection or someone loops you in, you go straight to the top of the list of the candidates, right? Because there's a validator there that's talking about, oh, like Michael is the perfect person to do this job. And then you have an interview right off the bat.
Right.
That
Is, you're like cutting the line essentially. Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head completely. I mean, I think that's another reason that building a personal brand is important. You want to be on the radar of people that you want to be on the radar of. And the way to do that is to create content that shows that you know what you know and have a personality that might be a good fit for their organization, so that when they are ready to hire for that position, they're thinking of you first. Right. And I have like real world. My last job was literally that experience. I interviewed for a position in revenue operations. The chief marketing officer was like, you know what? I'm trying to build an employer brand and talent marketing function at this company. It's highly strategic, and I think you're perfect for it. You want to do that. And I'm like, I don't have any experience in branding. He's like, you do it every day on LinkedIn. I just want you to do that for us.
Right.
And I was like, that's when the light bulb went off for me. I was like, wow, that's transformational. That's a pivot in my career that allowed me to pursue a passion because of a hobby I had. And that is really, really powerful, right? And that's why I say that this is not a social media platform. This is a serendipity manifestation platform, which is a mouthful and it's cheesy, but it's so true. If you just take that approach, you will derive a ton of value and opportunity from this place.
You should get that on a hoodie and wear that. I think that's your new.
That'll be my next hoodie acquisition. I'm off to cut the pink.
And I just put up John's comment that like it's a good thought, because I think that there are people who are blasting 200, 300, 400 applications to every job, and like when I was at WeWork, we would see a bunch of them, and they were just not not qualified, but they're just they're trying because they have a button.
Of course.
So I think that there's definitely some of that stuff that is going to have to change in 2024. So we actually have 6 minutes left. We have had a amazing conversation, and the staying power of our audience has been pretty awesome to see too.
Yeah,
Like,
that's fantastic.
usually you get, drop-offs after the first 15, 20 minutes. So I guess we must be doing something right here.
Hey, we should maybe turn this into a weekly or monthly thing.
I mean, if people want to see us more, we can certainly give them what they want. That's for sure. But I think, so with the 5 minutes left, I don't know if we can go through all of our negatives, but maybe we should talk about what we expect for 2024. So I'm gonna go Liam first, and then I'll
go for it.
And then, oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, so I think I think that we're going to see a lot of the same as we've been seeing in the last 4 months, 3-4 months. I think we're going to see impressions drop, but like focus on niche communities continue to grow. I am hopeful that we're going to see more and more people feeling comfortable talking on the platform, so that it's a much richer conversation. I mean, it's already rich, but I think we'll see more and more of that. And I really hope we don't see any sort of, like you said, pay to play options. Like I really hope they're able to keep that far and away. But I just think we're going to see more and more people realizing the power of using this platform, and that it's really the only place to have any sort of organic success, even if like the days of the Justin Walshes and people like that getting up to 100,000 is probably over. And by the way, I would add, like, he is great. I think he has a lot of good things to
Yeah,
say,
you
but
nailed
like
it.
right
Perfect
place, but
timing.
also right place at the right time to grow to
100%.
where he was. So like people should not feel bad about that. And that's also part of my challenge with some of the large accounts, just saying like, you just have to do it. It's like, well, like context matters here. And
Yes.
then like, you're also in a moment, you caught fire, and that's great. I'm super pumped for you. But like, let's also set some table stakes here. But anyways, I'm just really excited to continue using it. Like we're gonna do more LinkedIn lives and things like that. And I just hope that the conversations continue to get richer and richer. So
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think we're going to see a lot more video and live conversation on this platform. I posted something a while back about, is LinkedIn sort of the business equivalent of YouTube in terms of its nascency, video on this platform and live. Um, there's a lot that you can talk about in business, and there's a lot of value, right? CNBC is a big channel. There's a lot of people that tune into it every single day. If it's free and it's on LinkedIn, like why wouldn't people watch it here? So I think that's going to be a big thing. I think we're going to see a lot more in brand partnerships, and hopefully a lot more brand activity. One of the things that I think is so interesting about LinkedIn is how few brands actually use it to have conversation with their customer base. My poll 2 weeks ago was asking if people tag companies when they mention them on LinkedIn, and something like 72% of respondents said, yes, I tag companies.
hmm.
But most of them said they don't hear back. And I think that's interesting because, like, on Twitter, it's quick, right? Like there are companies like Wendy's that have made like a name for themselves
Yep.
having really catchy Twitter reactions. And it doesn't happen here. So I think you're going to start seeing more people posting on behalf of brands. So brand partnerships, which LinkedIn has built its own feature for. And I think you're going to see more brands paying attention to the conversation here. And rightfully so, because I think it's an elevated conversation. And that's where brands should probably spend more of their time, as opposed to the cesspools that they spend time in now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really interesting point because they've built teams to handle that sort of customer service stuff, and
Right.
in Twitter because it's a real time app. But it will be interesting to see how they pivot over to other channels because it's becoming a less reliable one, and also you have to pay now to do a lot of that, or you have to be verified
Yep.
in order to like DM people that you don't follow. So it's like the process is broken, and LinkedIn does have an opportunity here. I think the question is the real timeliness of it and how those would pop up in a way that could be, somebody who has an issue with their flight, like they need an answer in like 5 or 10 minutes. Like, so it'll be interesting, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for them to continue to have some market creep and continue to grow the way they've been. But yeah, I agree. So, well, my friends, we are at 12:59. We had a question it was from Justin, which we'll try to answer in the chat after this because I think we've run out of time. But I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. I mean, I'm blown away by the fact that we're still sitting at 32 people 59 minutes into this thing. And I apologize. I did not hit the chat overlay button so you could see everything that was coming in, which is a learning from me, which is why we ported over some of them. But first, I want to thank Liam. Always a pleasure to work with you, my friend. And
Likewise.
folks, if you do need personal branding on LinkedIn or coaching or even for your company, shoot him a note. And if you need some agile digital marketing services, please shoot me a note. Happy to help. But otherwise, thank you very much for this. We really appreciate it, and we'll schedule another one of these very soon.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and Tim for hosting and the idea to come up with it. This has been great. I love doing these. I need to do these more. I really do. We both do.
Well, we'll do it. We'll do
All
it.
right. Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody. Have a
guys.
wonderful weekend.
Bye.
Take care.